Would you have the courage to confront giants when everyone else is paralyzed by fear? What hidden truths did two men uncover in the Promised Land over 3,300 years ago? This was a land of towering giants and fierce battles. Yet, the Bible describes it as a land flowing with milk and honey. What made this land so valuable, and why has it been so sought after throughout history? This is the story of Joshua and the 12 spies who went to explore the Promised Land. They discovered Nephilim giants, war, and a land full of milk and honey. This is what Moses said to the spies. See what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, whether there are few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. Numbers 13, 18, 20. With these clear instructions, the spies set out to the Promised Land, carrying with them a mix of excitement and fear. They knew their mission was crucial for the future of their people. For 40 days they traveled through the land of Canaan, carefully observing everything Moses had instructed. They explored from the desert of Zin to Rehob near Lebo Hamath. They saw fertile lands full of crops and fruit trees, as well as arid and rocky places. They encountered large, fortified cities, some with imposing walls that seemed unbreakable, while others were open and unprotected villages. During their exploration, the spies collected samples of the land's fruit. They cut a cluster of grapes so large that 2 men had to carry it on a pole. They also brought pomegranates and figs. Upon returning to the Israelite camp, the spies presented themselves to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community, showing the fruit and giving their report. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. At this report, the Israelite community was divided. Some felt fear and discouragement, doubting their ability to conquer the land. However, Caleb, one of the spies, tried to calm the people and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." Joshua, another of the spies, supported Caleb, reminding the people of God's promises and his power to give them the land. Moses had asked the spies to investigate whether the nations living in the land were strong or weak, how many nations there were, and whether the land was abundant in trees and resources. When Moses repeats his view of the land, the people seem united by it. The state of the land reflects the state of the people. As the leader of the Israelites, Moses knew that his responsibility was not only spiritual, but also practical. He had guided his people through the desert, facing constant challenges. Now, on the edge of the Promised Land, he wanted to ensure his followers were prepared for what lay ahead. It was not enough to know that the land was good. He needed concrete details to plan the settlement and the battles they would face. Asking the spies to examine the land and bring back fruit also had a motivational purpose. Moses knew that seeing the land's abundance with their own eyes would reinforce the people's faith and encourage them to move forward. After years in the desert, they needed a tangible vision of the prosperity awaiting them. Moreover, Moses was aware of the real challenges they would encounter. Although he trusted in God's promise, he knew the land was inhabited by powerful peoples and fortified cities. By requesting a detailed report, he was preparing the people for these challenges, balancing the divine promise with a realistic view of the difficulties they would have to overcome. The phrase, "a land flowing with milk and honey," first appears in the Bible in the book of Exodus. Moses said to the spies, "Is it true that milk flows from streams and honey in the swamps? Did you see these mighty beings from these springs? Undoubtedly, this is a formidable challenge for our people. In this land, we barely have enough resources to sustain ourselves, but fighting these beasts for this rich land will be a challenge for our people. Go and gather as much information as possible. Find their weaknesses." With these clear instructions, the spies set out for the Promised Land. During their exploration, they collected samples of the land's fruit. They cut a cluster of grapes so large that they had to carry it between 2 men on a pole. They also brought pomegranates and figs. These fruits were a testament to the fertility and abundance of the land they explored, and their size and quality made it clear that the land indeed flowed with milk and honey. Day after day, the spies ventured deeper into the land of Canaan, marveling at its diversity and richness. They saw vast fields of crops and lush orchards. Streams and rivers flowed with clear, fresh water, and the land seemed promising for settlement and prosperity. However, not everything they found was encouraging. In every corner of the land, they discovered imposing cities with walls that seemed to reach the sky. The inhabitants were numerous and strong, and their armies well-trained. The fortresses were almost intimidating, with well-organized defenses suggesting years of preparation and consolidation. Furthermore, the spies encountered the descendants of Anak, giants of great stature and strength. These giants, known as the Anakim, were a fearsome sight. With their immense size and imposing presence, they appeared invincible. The spies saw them working in the fields, patrolling the walls, and moving with a confidence that reflected their dominance over the land. The sight of these giants instilled fear in the hearts of the spies, making them doubt their ability to confront them. After 40 days of exploration, the spies returned to the Israelite camp. There was a mix of anxiety and anticipation in the air as the community gathered to hear the report. Moses, Aaron, and the entire congregation eagerly awaited news about the Promised Land. The spies presented themselves to the crowd, showing the fruit they had brought with them. The cluster of grapes, pomegranates, and figs were impressive samples of the land's fertility. "We went into the land to which you sent us," they said. "It does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit." The crowd murmured with amazement and satisfaction upon seeing the tangible evidence of God's promise. However, the atmosphere shifted as the spies continued their report. "But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are very large and fortified," they said, and then, with a look of concern, added, "We also saw the descendants of Anak there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we must have seemed the same to them." This revelation caused unease among the Israelites. The spies described the Anakim giants, known for their great stature and strength, as well as the numerous peoples inhabiting different regions: the Amalekites in the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites in the mountains, and the Canaanites along the coast and the Jordan plain. The description of the powerful inhabitants, fortified cities, and fearsome giants sowed fear and doubt in the hearts of the people. Some began to murmur among themselves, questioning their ability to conquer such a fertile land. The promise of a land flowing with milk and honey suddenly seemed an overwhelming and dangerous task. Faith and uncertainty mixed in the minds of the Israelites, and the camp was filled with tension and debate. Thus, the spies' report posed a critical challenge: how to balance the promise of abundance with the reality of the obstacles in their path. The Israelite community was at a crossroads where their decisions and faith would determine their future. In response to this report, the community was divided. Some felt fear and discouragement, doubting their ability to conquer the land. Murmurs of unease spread through the camp as people heatedly discussed what they had heard. Some began to question whether they had made the right decision in following Moses up to this point. The fear of facing giants and fortified cities grew, and with it, discouragement took hold of many hearts. Amid this rising tide of fear, Caleb, one of the spies, stepped forward and raised his voice to calm the people. With unwavering firmness and confidence, he declared, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." His conviction was palpable, and his faith in God's promise was evident. Caleb saw beyond the giants and the walls. He saw the promised land as the destiny granted by God, a destiny within their grasp if only they trusted and acted courageously. Joshua, another of the spies and Caleb's companion, joined him in supporting Caleb. Joshua reminded the people of God's promises and his power to give them the land. "Do not be afraid of the people of the land," he said with a clear and serene voice, "because we will devour them. Their protection has been removed, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." Joshua emphasized that they should not rely on their own strength, but on the strength and faithfulness of God, who had already demonstrated his power and protection on multiple occasions. The intervention of Caleb and Joshua was a ray of hope amid the growing despair. Their words sought to rekindle the faith and courage of the Israelites, reminding them that God's promise would not fail and that his power surpassed any obstacle, no matter how great. Despite the discouraging reports about the giants and fortified cities, Caleb and Joshua urged the people to look beyond the difficulties and trust in the divine plan. However, the division within the community was deep. Many remained trapped in their fears, unable to see past them. Faith and fear clashed in a conflict that would determine the fate of the Israelites. While some began to find courage in Caleb's and Joshua's words, others continued to be mired in discouragement, caught in uncertainty about whether they could truly conquer the Promised Land. The tension in the camp reflected the crossroads at which the Israelite community found itself. Caleb's and Joshua's words were a call to action and faith, a reminder that with God's guidance, any challenge could be overcome. But the final decision rested with each member of the people, to trust in the divine promise and move forward with courage, or to succumb to fear and doubt, which threatened to paralyze them on the threshold of their promised destiny. In the story of the burning bush, God reveals himself to Moses and promises to bring the children of Israel to the Promised Land. The sight that the spies saw caused fear among the Israelites. The cluster they brought was not ordinary. It was an enormous cluster that had to be carried with poles. The spies brought the cluster and the large fruits as evidence of what they saw in the land of Israel. The spies saw strength and size beyond any human measure, an enormous cluster of grapes that required the combined effort of 2 men to transport, pomegranates and juicy figs, all silent witnesses to the land's fertility. However, it was not only the abundance of the fruits that impressed the spies. One spy, holding one of the giant grapes, said that the grape, the size of a small watermelon, barely fit in his hands. Its skin was taut and shiny under the sun, and squeezing it, the spy felt the juicy weight and resistance of the fruit. It was a palpable symbol of the abundance flowing from the Promised Land, but also a metaphor for the challenge it represented. The spy, barely able to hold the enormous grape, hesitated for a moment. Each step he took was a reminder of the land's potential and wealth, but also of the effort and strength required to conquer it. The fruit was a gift, a promise of prosperity, but its colossal size also hinted at the magnitude of the obstacles ahead. As the other spies observed, this man with great determination finally lifted the grape and carefully placed it in a basket. His arms trembled from the effort, but his eyes shone with a mixture of wonder and hope. The vision of a single grape so large and heavy was etched in everyone's memory, representing both the land's generosity and the challenges they would need to overcome. The spies returned from their mission deeply affected by what they had seen. The Promised Land was indeed a place of abundance, but it was also inhabited by beings of extraordinary size and power. This contrast between the promise of a fertile land and the presence of these powerful giants sowed a mix of awe and fear in their hearts. In the land of Israel, they saw strength and size beyond any human measure, an enormous cluster of grapes, giants, and fallen men. The spies returned from their mission shocked and amazed by the size and power of the people living there. Amid this debate, one of the spies, with a mix of fascination and fear, tried to justify the enormous stature of the land's inhabitants. "See these fruits," he began, holding one of the giant grapes in his hands, barely able to grasp it. "We have never seen grapes this large, nor pomegranates and figs of this size. The land is so fertile and rich that it produces these colossal fruits. Don't you think those who eat from this land also become colossal?" The crowd fell silent as the spy continued, his voice laden with a mix of awe and unease. "These giants we saw, the descendants of Anak, owe their size and strength to the very fruits I am holding. The land provides them with sustenance that allows them to grow beyond any human measure. This abundance not only nourishes their bodies, but also seems to grant them colossal strength." As the spy spoke, he stared intently at the enormous grape, as if it held the secret to the giant's power. "It is the land itself that makes them so great," he concluded. "If the fruits can grow to this size, it is not surprising that the men who feed on them are equally gigantic." The spy's reasoning resonated among those present, increasing both fascination and fear. The explanation gave a tangible sense to the power of the land's inhabitants, making the promise of abundance seem even more real, and at the same time, the challenges more insurmountable. The vision of giants sustained by gigantic fruits was etched in the Israelites' minds, symbolizing both the land's richness and the formidable obstacles they would need to overcome. They realized that indeed there was a connection between the nature of the land and the strong, enormous people living in it. The giants living in the land are said to be responsible for the size of the fruit there. Caleb, one of the 12 spies, did not deny the words of the spies, but hurried to speak out of fear of what the spies' words might cause. Caleb rushed to calm and strengthen the people, and it was precisely after his words that the spies emerged from the shock they were in due to the images they had seen and responded. "We cannot attack those people. They are stronger than we are. The land provides them with sustenance that allows them to grow beyond any human measure. This abundance not only nourishes their bodies, but also seems to grant them colossal strength." The spy took a deep breath, trying to calm his own nerves. "We are a people who have wandered in the desert for years. Our strength cannot compare to that of these inhabitants. The giants we saw are not only enormous, they are accustomed to a land that provides them with unmatched strength. Their bodies are fortified by years of living and working in this rich land." Another spy, nodding gravely, added, "It is not just their size that makes them invincible in our eyes. It is their ability to use that strength. We saw them building imposing walls and fortifications that seem impregnable. They have lived here for generations, perfecting their defense and attack techniques. Attacking these giants would be like hurling ourselves against a solid rock mountain with bare hands." The explanation resonated deeply among the Israelites. The spies were not only describing the great stature of the inhabitants, but also highlighting the impressive infrastructure and military preparation they had observed. "The cities are walled up to the sky," continued the first spy, "and their defenses are impregnable. We saw them training their armies, men as large as trees, with the discipline and skill of seasoned warriors. We, on the other hand," interjected another, "have spent years in the desert living in tents and fighting only against the elements. We lack the experience and strength to face such adversaries. We have no walls or fortifications or the kind of weaponry they possess. Our army, though brave, cannot compare with the might we saw in that land." The spy's logic about the relationship between the enormous fruits and the giants continued to resonate, intensifying the internal conflict between faith and fear within the Israelite community. Despite the divine promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, the reality of the giants and the fortifications seemed an insurmountable obstacle. The vision of giants fed by gigantic fruits, protected by impregnable walls, was etched in the Israelites' minds, symbolizing the wealth of the land and the formidable challenges they would have to overcome. Numbers 13:31 states that they would not be able to ascend because the land was filled with giants. "We saw the Nephilim there," they said, "and we seemed like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight." Numbers 13:31 describes the inhabitants of the land as Nephilim. One biblical scholar links the Nephilim seen by the spies in Israel with the Nephilim of the flood generation, who were descended from the heavenly giants known as the sons of Shem and Asasel, who fell from heaven. In ancient texts, the Nephilim are described as beings of great stature and power, descendants of the sons of God who joined with the daughters of men. Genesis mentions that these giants existed on the earth before the flood and also afterward. The scholar suggests that the Nephilim mentioned by the spies in the land of Canaan might have a direct connection to those ancient giants known for their extraordinary size and strength. According to tradition, Shem and Asasel were two fallen angels who led a rebellion against God and descended to earth, taking human wives and producing a race of giants. These beings, the Nephilim, were known for their immense stature and power, and their presence was one of the reasons God sent the flood to purify the earth. The scholar proposes that the descendants of these Nephilim survived the flood or re-emerged afterward, settling in the land of Canaan. This idea is supported by the biblical description of the spies finding the descendants of Anak, a line of giants in Canaan. The connection is strengthened when considering that the spies saw men of colossal stature and great strength, resembling the pre-flood Nephilim descriptions. "These giants we saw," recounted one of the spies, "were like the Nephilim of the ancient stories. Their size and strength were beyond any human measure. They moved with an authority and power we have not seen anywhere else. We must have appeared to them like grasshoppers." The scholar suggests that this observation is not merely an exaggeration born of fear, but a genuine connection with the ancestral accounts of giants that once filled the earth with awe and terror. The descendants of Anak seen by the spies were not merely tall and strong men, but a continuation of the same line of giants that once filled the earth with fear and amazement. The presence of the Nephilim in Canaan would have been a powerful sign to the Israelites, evoking memories of the flood generation and the mighty giants that dominated that era. This linkage not only explained the formidable appearance of the Canaanite inhabitants, but also provided a historical and theological context for the challenges the Israelites faced. The battle for the Promised Land was not just against mortal men, but against an ancient and powerful heritage of giants descended from fallen angels. Before Noah's birth, the flood generation grew and intensified to reach enormous and inhuman proportions. The flood generation, even before Noah's birth, expanded and intensified into enormous and inhuman dimensions. In ancient times, according to sacred accounts and traditions, it is said that angels descended from the heavens and sired the Nephilim and heroes, also known as the sons of God, with the daughters of men. These celestial beings, who initially dwelled in divine presence, made the decision to abandon their place in heaven and unite with humanity, an act that forever changed the course of history. Among the angels who descended, two names stand out, Shemaz and Asazel. According to tradition, these angels, fascinated by the beauty of the daughters of men, made a pact to take human wives and sire a new race. This pact was made with full awareness of the consequences of their rebellious act against God's will. Thus they began to descend to earth in great numbers, bringing with them knowledge and skills that humanity had not known before. The daughters of men, dazzled by these celestial beings, gave birth to children who were not like ordinary men. These descendants, known as Nephilim, were giants of immense stature and strength. The Nephilim, whose name means the fallen or the overthrowers, walked the earth with an authority and power that inspired both admiration and terror. In addition to the Nephilim, heroes and renowned men, known as the sons of God, were born. These individuals were famous for their great deeds and bravery, excelling in battle and governance. They were considered semi-divine due to their celestial heritage and stood out in all aspects of human life. Their heroic acts and wisdom left an indelible mark on the history and culture of ancient civilizations. The influence of these celestial descendants was profound and far-reaching. The Nephilim, with their gigantic stature and strength, dominated the earth and established powerful kingdoms. Their presence was a constant reminder of the angels' transgression and the crossing of boundaries between the divine and the human. As the Nephilim grew in number and power, they began to exert increasing influence over humanity, ruling with a firm and at times tyrannical hand. Shemaz and Asazel, the leaders of this rebellion, taught humans knowledge beyond their natural understanding, introducing advanced arts and sciences including metallurgy, sorcery, and astronomy. Although these skills were beneficial in some aspects, they also brought about great moral decay. Humanity, under the influence of the Nephilim and the knowledge imparted by the fallen angels, fell into a period of unprecedented violence and depravity. The divine reaction to these events was severe. The Bible and other sacred texts recount that the wickedness of men, exacerbated by the influence of the Nephilim and the fallen angels, led God to send the great flood to purify the earth of this corruption. Only Noah and his family, deemed righteous, were saved to restart humanity in a world cleansed of the Nephilim's pernicious influence. However, the story does not end there. Scriptures suggest that even after the flood, the descendants of the Nephilim continued to exist on earth. This is the context in which the Israelite spies, while exploring the land of Canaan, encountered the Anakim. These giants, reminiscent of the ancient Nephilim, presented a formidable challenge to the Israelites, both physically and spiritually. The spies, observing the immense stature and strength of these inhabitants, understood that they were not only facing a powerful enemy in human terms, but also the remnants of an ancient and fearsome race whose origins were deeply rooted in the intersection of the divine and the human. This understanding added a layer of complexity and fear to the already difficult challenge of conquering the Promised Land, making the Israelites' mission seem even more insurmountable. Thus, the presence of the Nephilim and their descendants in the land of Canaan became a powerful symbol of the gigantic obstacles, both literal and figurative, that needed to be overcome to fulfill the divine destiny promised to the children of Israel. When humans began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. This declaration marked a crucial point in human history. The extreme longevity that had characterized the early human generations would be reduced, limiting human life to 120 years. This divine decision arose in response to the growing corruption and wickedness that had spread over the earth, a wickedness intensified by the presence of the Nephilim. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. These beings, the result of the union between fallen angels and human women, were not mere mortals. They were giants both in stature and influence, and their presence exacerbated the moral decay of humanity. In Noah's time, the earth had been filled with violence and corruption. The Nephilim, with their great power and stature, stood as relentless leaders and warriors. Their semi-divine nature endowed them with superior skills and knowledge that they used to dominate and subjugate peoples. The influence of fallen angels like Shemaz and Asazel also contributed to this situation. These angels imparted forbidden knowledge, teaching humans arts that, although advanced, were used for evil. The union of the sons of God with the daughters of men resulted in a race of beings who were not only physically imposing, but also possessed great capacity for leadership and warfare. These Nephilim were known as the heroes of antiquity and men of renown, legendary figures whose feats and tyrannies were recounted in the stories of all nations. The presence of the Nephilim created an environment in which violence and injustice flourished. Wars became more brutal, and acts of tyranny and oppression became common. The earth itself seemed to cry out for justice in the face of such wickedness. It was in this context that God decided to send the flood to purify the earth, saving only Noah and his family. Those who were considered righteous were the renowned heroes of old, Genesis 6:14. These verses describe human values after which God intervened and limited human life to 120 years. Even after that, the sons of God continued to be born, but the flood swept away and annihilated everyone except Noah and his descendants. The Nephilim were tall and formidable beings who terrified everyone. They first appear at the end of Genesis, where 7 names were given to them: the terrors, ghosts, heroes, buzzing giants, wretched ones, and Nephilim. When the spies were sent to explore the land of Canaan, they encountered scenes that defied their understanding and fueled both their fear and awe. Among the many astonishing things they witnessed, one of the most impressive was seeing giants fighting against dinosaurs. These giants, like the descendants of Anak, were types of individuals who had survived the flood, just as some of the enormous reptiles had. The spies cautiously advanced through the region of Hebron, a place already known for its terrifying reputation. Hebron was known as the city where 4 famous giants were born, and it did not take long for the spies to understand why. In the open fields they saw colossal figures, men of impressive stature, battling against equally imposing creatures. The giants, with their prodigious strength, fought against dinosaurs that still roamed the land. It was an epic sight of mythical proportions. The enormous sauropods and theropods, creatures that seemed to have come from a pre-flood era, were fearsome opponents even for the giants. The spies watched in awe as the giants, with their communal strength and skills, faced these prehistoric animals in fierce combat. One of the spies, hidden behind a rock, saw a giant gripping a dinosaur by its long and powerful neck, trying to subdue the beast that was fiercely resisting. Another spy saw a giant wielding a massive spear, facing a predator with sharp teeth that roared loudly. The battle was intense and brutal, a struggle for survival that recalled ancient legends of titans and monsters. These giants were not simply large in stature. They were trained warriors capable of confronting the most fearsome creatures nature could offer. Among them were legendary figures like the giants of Hebron and Og, the king of Bashan, whose names evoked stories of power and dominance. Og, in particular, was famous not only for his size, but also for his prowess as a warrior and his longevity, having survived the flood and ruled over Bashan with an iron hand. The spies, upon witnessing these battles, understood that they were not only facing powerful human enemies, but also an ecosystem that housed creatures from past eras. The presence of dinosaurs coexisting with the giants was a testament to the unique and terrifying nature of the land of Canaan. Upon returning to the Israelite camp, the spies tried to convey the magnitude of what they had seen. "We have seen giants," they said, men of colossal strength and size fighting against creatures as large as themselves, dinosaurs that seem to have survived the flood, battling in the fields of Hebron and Bashan. These giants are not only strong, they are capable of facing beasts that none of us could dream of defeating. The Israelite community listened in silence, absorbed by the spies' accounts. The descriptions of the battles between the giants and dinosaurs made the challenge of conquering the land seem even more daunting. They would not only have to confront extraordinary men, but also the titanic creatures that inhabited the land alongside them. The spies' principal sin was that they betrayed themselves and denied their divine mission. They were tasked with a sacred mission that required not only physical bravery, but also unwavering faith in God's promises. However, what they found there tested both their courage and their spirituality. Their punishment, which was that they would not enter the land, strongly expressed their sin. The generation that was taken out of Egypt with signs and wonders, the generation that received the Torah, and was called the firstborn of Israel, would not enter the land because it did not believe in God. They went up through the Negev and arrived at Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt, Numbers 13:22. The natives of the giants, also known as the sons of the giants, were among the inhabitants of the land of Canaan. According to the conquest of the Israelites, due to their size, they instilled fear and dread in everyone who encountered them. Deuteronomy identifies the giants with the Rephaim, just like the Anakim. They were also considered Rephaim, but the Moabites called them Emim, Deuteronomy 2:11. The children of these giants survived in the lowlands of the coast even after the Israelites, led by Joshua, conquered the land. At that time, Joshua went and destroyed the Anakim from the mountainous region of Hebron, Debir, and Anab, from the entire mountainous region of Judah and all the mountainous region of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them and their towns. No Anakim were left in Israelite territory, only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did they survive. Joshua 11:21-22. In those days, giant warriors were often encountered. In the days of Abraham, a notable victory is mentioned in the Bible, where 4 kings defeated the giants who settled in the 10 horns before entering the Promised Land. These giants, feared for their size and strength, represented a great threat to the peoples of the region. Later, in the time of Moses, we find another reference to the giants in the figure of Og, king of Bashan. Og was one of the last survivors of the Rephaim, a race of giants. The Bible describes his bed as being 9 cubits long, which is approximately 4 meters, highlighting his imposing stature. Moses and the Israelites fought a fierce battle against Og and his forces, resulting in the defeat of the giant and his army. In the book of Joshua, we find more accounts of confrontations with giants. Caleb, a brave and faithful leader, fought against the giants that inhabited Hebron, a city known for its ancient and powerful lineage of giants. With God's help, Caleb succeeded in defeating them and claiming the land for the Israelites. Joshua, Moses' successor, continued the mission to conquer the Promised Land and faced numerous giants in the process. Joshua fought against all the giants in the land, except for those who lived in the land of the Philistines. These giants, including the famous inhabitants of Gath like Goliath, remained a threat until later times. Each of these stories highlights the power and divine intervention in battles against the giants, emphasizing the importance of faith and courage in overcoming seemingly invincible forces. These accounts not only offer fascinating tales of heroism and challenge, but also provide profound spiritual and theological lessons about trusting in God in the face of adversity. During the days of King David, David and his men destroyed many of the giants. The book of Samuel records that David killed the Philistine giant Goliath during King Saul's war against the Philistines. David subdued the giant Goliath even when all the warriors were terrified. In David's kingdom, his soldiers killed the remaining Philistine giants. In other accounts, it was said that all the Philistine heroes were sons of Ar, meaning descendants of ghosts. This implied a mysterious and supernatural origin for these warriors, adding an air of mysticism and fear to their already formidable reputation in the region. Returning to the city of Hebron, it was also known as Kiriath Arba. In Hebrew, Arba means 4, which leads to the intriguing question of why the city is named after the number 4. This question arises because Arba is not only a number, but also the name of a legendary figure. In the book of Joshua, we are told that Arba was the name of one of the most prominent giants. In fact, Arba was considered the greatest man among the Anakim, a race of giants known for their great size and strength. The city of Hebron has a rich and multifaceted history. Besides being one of the oldest settlements in the region, its connection with Arba and the Anakim gives it an epic dimension. The Anakim were descendants of the Nephilim mentioned in Genesis, and their presence in Hebron made the city a place of great fear and respect. The figure of Arba the giant is central to the narrative of Hebron. It was said that Arba was the most powerful and feared ancestor among the giants, and his name became synonymous with strength and dominance. Thus, the city was not only an urban center, but also a symbol of the power and resistance of the ancient giants. In the book of Joshua, Caleb, an Israelite leader, receives Hebron as an inheritance after the conquest of Canaan. Known for his bravery and faith, Caleb specifically requested Hebron, desiring to face and defeat the descendants of Arba, the Anakim giants who still resided there. His success in this task not only consolidated Israelite control over the region, but also symbolized overcoming the greatest fears and challenges, reaffirming the divine promise of delivering the land to the Israelites. These stories underline the complexity and depth of the biblical narrative, where the intersection of mythology, history, and theology offers rich lessons about faith, courage, and perseverance in the face of seemingly insurmountable adversities. The city of Hebron, with its multifaceted name and connection to the giants, remains a powerful symbol in biblical traditions and the historical memory of the people of Israel. The city of Hebron, also known as Kiriath Arba, is named in honor of Arba, the greatest of all giants. Arba is a prominent figure in the Bible, known for his imposing stature and strength. According to biblical scholars, Arba lived in Hebron with his 3 sons, Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. These 3 descendants were also giants, and together they were known as the sons of Arba. Arba and his sons represent the powerful dynasty of the Anakim, a race of giants mentioned repeatedly in biblical scriptures. The Anakim were feared for their great size and strength, and their presence in Hebron made the city a place of great respect and dread. The Bible recounts that these giants imposed their dominance and spread terror among the inhabitants of the land, as well as among the Israelite spies sent by Moses to explore Canaan. The biblical narrative in the book of Numbers describes how the spies, upon returning from their mission, reported that the land of Canaan was inhabited by giants, descendants of Anak, and that they felt like grasshoppers in comparison to them. This report caused panic among the Israelites, who doubted their ability to conquer the promised land due to the presence of these colossal enemies. Later in the book of Joshua, Caleb, one of the 2 spies who trusted in God's promise, specifically requested the region of Hebron as his inheritance, despite the presence of giants. With unwavering faith, Caleb set out to confront them with God's help. Caleb succeeded in defeating the sons of Arba, taking possession of Hebron, and fulfilling the divine promise. The story of Arba and his sons in Hebron not only highlights the physical struggle against the giants, but also the spiritual and emotional confrontation of the Israelites against their own fears and doubts. Caleb's victory over the giants symbolizes overcoming the most formidable obstacles through faith and determination. Therefore, Hebron is more than an ancient city. It is a symbol of faith triumphing over fear and divine promise fulfilled despite adversities. The figure of Arba and his giant sons remains a powerful representation of the challenges that can be overcome with trust in God and unwavering courage. In the book of Numbers, Moses sent 12 spies to explore the land of Canaan. Upon their return, 10 of them reported that the land was inhabited by giants, descendants of Anak, and described how they felt like grasshoppers compared to them. This report caused panic and discouragement among the Israelites, who doubted their ability to conquer the promised land due to the presence of these colossal enemies. However, Caleb and Joshua, the other 2 spies, trusted in God's promise and encouraged the people not to fear the giants, but to trust in the Lord. Their faith and bravery contrasted with the fear and doubt of the others. The lesson we can draw from this story is powerful. We often face challenges that seem insurmountable, giants that make us feel small and vulnerable. Yet, it is in these moments of uncertainty and fear that our faith and determination are most crucial. Like Caleb and Joshua, we must remember that with confidence and courage, we can overcome even the greatest obstacles. True strength does not lie in our physical stature, but in our ability to believe and act with conviction. That concludes today's video. A million thanks to everyone for watching the video until the end. You are a wonderful audience, and all this research work is worth it because of your dedication and gratitude with each video we upload to the channel. Thank you again to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day and may God bless you. See you soon.